I never thought a simple camping trip would unravel the fabric of our marriage. The mountain A was crisp. The stars, a silent witness to our laughter, and the warmth of the campfire. But as the night deepened, sodded the shadows of doubt in my heart. Mark, my husband of over 3 decades, suggested something wild, something that would change everything as the fire dwindled to embers. He proposed we swap tents just for the night. Little did I know, this playful suggestion would lead me down a path of temptation, where the line between right and wrong blurred under the indifferent gaze of the stars. And now, as dawn breaks, I'm left with a choice that could either mend or shatter the life I've known. What will I do when the truth comes to light? The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint echo of a distant owl's call. I stood by the edge of the lake, watching the stars dance on the water's surface, their light flickering like distant memories. My name is Anna, and at 53, life with Mark had settled into a rhythm as predictable as the seasons. But here in this untouched wilderness, I hoped for something different, something more. Mark, always the life of any gathering, had suggested this camping trip with his friends Tom and Dave. I agreed, not just for the adventure, but with a quiet hope that the change of scenery might breathe new life into our relationship. The day had been filled with the simple joys of nature, fishing, laughter, and the warmth of a campfire. As night deepened, the stars emerged, painting the sky with their cold, distant light. Mark, in his usual fashion, had brought along his favorite whiskey, and as the evening wore on, the bottles grew lighter. His laughter grew louder, his stories more animated, and his movements less coordinated. I remember watching him, his silhouette against the fire, as he shared tales of our youth, his voice slurring lightly. Tom and Dave, equally affected by the whiskey, chimed in with their own stories, their laughter echoing through the quiet night. Then, as the fire dwindled to embers, Mark suggested we all sleep under the stars, a romantic notion that seemed to fit the night's mood. However, in his inebriated state, Hep proposed something a bit more unconventional. He suggested we swap tents just for the night, to make the experience more memorable. I hesitated, the idea both thrilling and unsettling. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on our faces as we shared tales of past adventures. Mark, now quite tipsy, suggested a toast to old friendships. His laughter was infectious, but his balance was not. He stumbled, spilling his drink. And Tom, always the responsible one, suggested he get some rest. Mark, in his inebriated state, decided he'd sleep in Tom's tent, claiming it was just like old times. I watched, a bit amused, as he staggered off with Tom, leaving me with Dave, who was quietly nursing his own drink. The night grew colder, and the idea of sleeping outside was less appealing. By the minute, Dave, sensing my discomfort, offered hesitant, "No sense in you freezing out?" "Here, Anna," he said with a warm smile. I paused, considering my options. The thought of braving the cold alone was daunting, but the idea of sharing a tent with Dave felt complicated. Mark's suggestion to swap tents had already stirred something within me, a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Dave," I started, my voice barely above a whisper, "I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll manage on my own." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "All right, Anna, but if you change your mind, you know where to find me." As Dave retreated to his tent, I wrapped my jacket tighter around me, feeling the chill seep through my layers. The fire had died down to mere embers now, and the silence of the night was almost overwhelming. I could hear the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl, each sound amplifying the solitude around me. I hesitated for a moment, the propriety of sharing a tent with another man, even a friend, weighing on me. But the cold was biting, and Dave's tent was warm and inviting. I thanked him and settled into my sleeping bag, keeping a respectful distance as the night deepened. The silence of the mountains enveloped us. I was almost asleep when I felt something hard pressing against my back. My heart raced, fear gripping me. Was it an animal, a rock? But then realization dawned. It was Dave, and he was aroused. My mind raced back to the last time Mark and I had been intimate months. Ego, the loneliness, the longing for touch it, all came rushing back. Dave's breath was warm on my neck, and in that moment, he made a choice. I never thought I would. I turned to face him. Our eyes meeting in the dim light. There was a question in his gaze, a silent inquiry. I nodded my heart, pounding, not just from the cold, but from the rush of emotions. I need this, I whispered, my voice trembling. With a mix of desire and guilt, Dave's hand reached out gently, touching my cheek. His touch was electric, and sending shivers down my spine. I leaned into it, closing my eyes, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine. The tent was small, our bodies close, the air thick with unspoken words. In the heat of our breaths, I could feel the tension, the anticipation. Dave's fingers traced down my neck, his touch light, but deliberate. I've always admired you, Anna, he murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. The words hung in the air, a confession that seemed to echo through the silent night. I felt a surge of something forbidden, something thrilling as our lips met. It was gentle, at first a tentative exploration, but soon the kiss deepened, fueled by the pent-up longing and the isolation of the wilderness. I knew this was wrong, knew it, went against everything I stood for, but the need for connection, for warmth, for something real in this cold, starlit night was overwhelming. As we moved, I turned slightly, my heart pounding in its cage. Dave's eyes met mine, a mix of surprise and desire in them. Anna, he whispered, his voice a mix of apology and longing. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the same conflict that was tearing through me. We didn't speak. Words would have broken the spell. The fragile moment where everything could still go back to normal. Instead, I moved closer, feeling the heat of his body through the layers of our sleeping bags. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your breath catch in your throat. Dave's hand found mine, his touch tentative at first, then growing bolder as I didn't pull away. His fingers traced the lines of my palm, sending electric shivers up my arm. I felt the warmth of his breath on my neck. His lips so close, yet not touching. The decision was mine. A crossroads of desire and duty. I knew what I should do, what I was expected to do, but in the dim light of the tent with the stars as our only witnesses, the pull towards something forbidden was magnetic. His lips finally met mine, a soft, questioning kiss. It was gentle, a whisper of what could be, what we both wanted. But knew we shouldn't. The kiss deepened, and I felt myself slipping, the line between right and wrong blurring. In the heat of the moment, I pulled back slightly, my mind racing. Dave, we can't, I murmured, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat. He nodded, understanding, but the longing in his eyes didn't fade. Ikno, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But for just this moment, can we pretend the tent felt like a cocoon isolating us from the world outside? He wanted to say no, to pull back from the brink, but the loneliness, the yearning for connection, it was all too much. Instead of answering, I leaned in again, our lips meeting with a fervor that spoke of years of suppressed desire. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt the world outside dissolve. But even as I hesitated, the decision was made in silence, in the dark of the tent, under the indifferent stars. I gave in to the moment, to the need for connection, for touch. Dave's hands were gentle, his touch tentative. At first, then more assured as I responded. It was a betrayal, a moment of weakness, or perhaps strength, I couldn't decide. But as we moved together, the world outside the tent ceased to exist. It was just us, the warmth and the forbidden, thrill of the act in the aftermath. As we lay there, the reality of what had transpired began to seep in the cold air of the mountain night, seemed to seep through the tent fabric, chilling the heat of our bodies. I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me: guilt, satisfaction, confusion, and An odd sense of liberation. Dave's breathing was steady beside me, his presence both comforting and a stark reminder of my infidelity. I turned to look at him, his face softened by sleep, and I wondered about the morning. How would we face each other? How would I face Mark? The night had changed, irrevocably. I knew that when dawn broke, I would not be the same Anna who had entered this tent. The intimacy with Dave, though fleeting, had ignited something within me, a desire for more than just the routine of my life. With Mark as I lay there, the weight of my actions pressed down on me. Would Mark sense the change? Could he ever forgive me if he found out? And what of my relationship with Dave? Could we ever look at each other without this night hanging between us? I thought about the years with Mark, the comfort, the predictability, the love that had once been vibrant but had dulled over time. This night, this moment, with Dave, it was a stark contrast to that. It was raw, passionate, and utterly selfish. The stars outside continued their different watch, and I realized that this night would be a turning point. I would have to decide how to move forward. Would I confess to Mark, seeking forgiveness, or would I keep this secret, letting it fester inside me and Dave? What? Would morning came too soon, the light filtering through the tent, fabric casting a harsh reality over what had transpired. Dave was already up his back, to me perhaps lost in his own thoughts or regrets. I dressed quickly, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, confusion, a strange sense of liberation. Mark was up, looking a bit worse for wear, but cheerful, oblivious to the night's events. As we packed up, I couldn't meet Dave's eyes. The drive back was quiet, each of us lost in our thoughts. Mark, ever the optimist, talked about planning another trip, not knowing how this one had changed everything. The silence in the car was thick, filled with the unspoken weight of last night. I glanced at Dave through the rearview mirror, his face unreadable, a mask of calm that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mark's voice broke through my reverie. So, Anna, what did you think of the trip? Did you enjoy the stars? I forced a smile, my voice steady, but my heart racing. It was enlightening, replied the words, tasting like ash in my mouth. The landscape outside blurred as we drove, each mile taking us further from the mountain, but not from theme, memory of what had happened. I felt Dave's gaze, occasionally a silent acknowledgement of our shared secret, a bond now forged in the shadows of the night at home. The routine of unpacking seemed surreal. Mark come to tune, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I watched him, his familiar movements now tinged with a sense of betrayal. That evening, as Mark prepared dinner, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. The decision loomed over me like a dark cloud. Mark, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. There's something need to tell you about last night. He turned, a spatula in hand, his expression shifting from casual to concerned. What's wrong, Anna? I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. When you suggested swapping tents, something happened with Dave. It was unexpected. Mark's face fell, the weight of my words sinking in. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create more engaging stories for you.